Hold on a second, I need to press.
We're going to start 2 minutes early tonight and set a new precedent here.
1 second, we're not started quite yet.
Maybe we're not.
There's a lag and, yeah,
Should grab some water.
Are we filming?
we are.
We'll call this meeting to order and go to the agenda. Item 1 on the agenda is design.
Can I take?
Pardon? You may.
Thank you. Claire Met,
Here.
Grant Blythe,
Here.
Ray Stobie is absent, as well as John McLaughlin and Chair Basinger.
Here.
Thank you.
Now we will move forward
All
with
right.
the design advice for a single-family bungalow in Kenema.
Thank you, Chair Basinger. As you know, the design advice process is not the full land use process, but we do encourage applicants to come in for non-binding advice. It's a great way to meet for the Historic Review Board and kind of let the neighbors know where your design is in the process and kind of hear that initial feedback. Once again, it's non-binding. So each board member will speak individually. There's not a combined voice or vote on this. These meetings and this record will be added into the actual land use application so people can follow what was said. We will be taking public comment tonight, just like public hearings, so it's 3 minutes per person, any public comment. But once again, the board can just give non-binding advice. I have a couple slides I'd like to go back just kind of to look at how staff views this proposal, and then I'll let the applicant come up and kind of make their presentation. So this, real briefly, I attached the design guidelines 2-page section about bungalows from the adopted design guidelines. And the areas in yellow are kind of what I think I'm thinking about most with this design right now. And I think the applicant needs to kind of really address as they move forward, and I'll kind of lift those off. These are, you know, not inclusive, but I think the things that really pop out. Under building form, more emphasis on the horizontal than the vertical. This extends into porch, dormers, and window design, more ground hugging. Bungalows height, 1 or more, often 1.5 stories high, probably basement, possible basement. Proportions, height to width, approximately 1.5 ratio of height to depth. No more than 2 for the main building portion, not including the front porch. Roof, a low pitch of 612. I couldn't find the pitch on the applicant's proposal, so I'll have the applicant talk about that tonight. And the porch, roof supported with simple posts, less bulky than McLaughlin. So I think it's the size and massing questions that I'm really interested in regards to this. Just a quick overview. It's located kind of on a back parcel in Kenema, so it's going to be hard to see from the street, but nonetheless, it is still inside the historic district. So we kind of have that balance of how visible is it, but you're still within the historic district boundaries, and therefore the design guidelines and the adopted code are still applicable. You'll see the layout. We have the house here facing towards 4th Street, as well as a detached garage with an ADU or a dwelling unit next door to it, with the kind of drive separating the two. This shows the overlay district, right? I mean, the overlay of the area. It's a 2 5,000 square foot lots together, so it's a 10,000 square foot parcel. This is a new 3-dimensional design that the applicant just sent me today, so it's not in your packet. So the applicant can talk about that, what the 3D rendering looks like. You'll see the garage accessory dwelling, as well as the main unit. This shows the front elevation. Oh, here we go. This shows a 412, but that's a 712, okay. And then this is the front elevation of the garage. So the applicant, I also have available all the plans. So if you want to see a specific elevation, you want more questions, we can bring that up. So I can bring the applicant up. Let me know if there's anything you want me to go towards.
And for the record, if you'll state your name.
My name is Todd Iceland with Iceland Architects, 1307 7th Street. The property owners, Karen and Morris Shademan, are also here. What their desire is to build the ADU probably before the house and move into that and then build the house. And they want a smaller home. They're not trying to fill the entire site. which is pleasant. We're trying to get kind of a bungalow style, but it is a 2-story or 1.5-story. Well, it's 1 story, but it has a portion that's 2-story. But to stretch it out and emphasize the horizontal, we wrapped the porch around the one side as well. The house, as Christina noted, is not going to really be visible from 4th. It's an unusual site. I had a problem finding the site when they first described it to me. It's very hidden back there.
Me too. I did a lot of backing up.
Right. But I think it's an appropriate design for the site. I think we've tried to emphasize the horizontal and pick up on the bungalow elements with the big overhangs. We did go with a 7/12 rather than a 6/12 pitch. We could reduce that more if the board felt that was appropriate. The shed dormer, we felt was more in keeping with the bungalow style than a gable dormer on the side there. Again, it's a very small home, but I think will be very comfortable for them. So we're here for your advice and guidance.
Okay. I think what we'll do, we have a couple of members of the public here who want to speak as well, so we'll give them their time to talk, and then we'll probably call you back up here when we have the whole picture and
Okay.
discuss it then.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Paul Edgar.
Thank you. Good evening. Paul Edgar, Kenema. This house, all of the contributing historic houses around here are all vernacular. This is a 2-story, and it's against the kind of the code for for this type of house design to be 2-story. It would be more appropriate and more compatible with this district. There are none of the historic houses above on 4th Avenue, 4th and 5th that were contributing or anything other than vernacular. Even that new house that's going in across the street is a vernacular. The new house next door to it is a vernacular design. And the contributing house directly in front. So we don't want something that detracts. And that's a key element of having a house there. So my recommendation would be to switch this away from a 2-story, which is not allowed, to a vernacular design and make a 1.5-story vernacular, and you'll achieve the same goal. And in fact, it will look better and be more appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Lonnie Young.
Oh, that's for the next one.
Oh. All right then. Todd, would you like to come back then, and we'll start giving design advice, and then maybe you would want to invite the property owners to join you, and we can meet them as well.
Well, we actually were deliberate in our choice of not going with a vernacular style home for several reasons. The most important one was actually because we're not trying to recreate something. We are trying to do something that is obviously different, but it fits within the district. And there are other vernacular or craftsman and bungalow style homes in the area. As Paul mentioned, the ones that are most prominent right around this home are in fact vernacular style. But we chose to go a different direction with it.
And you had a question? Can we see that 3D rendering
Sure.
that you had up here a little bit ago? Because I think that it might show a little bit more of
sorry.
what we're talking about. The contours of the ground.
They're a little rough. This was very rushed.
This is, I'm looking at it in the drawing here. It faces essentially north, which puts it sideways on the lot if you consider the Apperson Street frontage. I suspect that this lot will get an Apperson Street address in the end, even though Apperson Street is undeveloped.
I'm not sure where they're going to address it. You never know with the city.
Well, that's true, but what are you going to give it for an address?
Right.
You know, it was platted off Fifth Avenue.
Correct.
So
But the postman would never find it on Fifth.
there'll never be a Fifth Avenue.
So the house does not face Fourth, it will face.
It does
It faces
face
north.
Okay.
This is, that view is looking up the
Looking at,
driveway.
okay.
looking up
So when you were
Apperson
saying Apperson,
from
I'm like,
Fourth. And then
okay.
there's an alley on one side and then Fifth on the other.
This would be Apperson here.
right, no, I got that. Okay. Because it definitely with the two-story and then the basement, the porch and, you know, underneath, it definitely has more of a vertical look, I think,
Well,
than
the porch will be screened underneath there with some lattice or
Right.
something.
yeah, I think you had that on
And
one of
plantings will
the
be
pictures, yeah.
critical too along there.
But it still has a pretty vertical look to it. Posts on, because it does have the two-story, which is you know, a full two-story, so it kind of has more of the vernacular than, you know, because usually you don't see
Right.
porches on or balconies on the second floor.
The second floor balcony was something that they really desired and
Right.
that really doesn't fit.
So
with
it's
the
kind of a
style.
vernacular with some bungalow accoutrements.
Exactly.
Okay.
Do you have some other homes that have that style of second-story porch in Oregon City?
I don't think there are any in Oregon City that I'm aware of. There are some up in Irvington neighborhood, in Portland, but they're quite large. This is very different than that.
Yeah. The Fellows House down on Highway 99 has a little porch up over the front porch.
But that ain't no bungalow.
That ain't no.
No, it's pretty gothic.
I don't know, my impression when I first saw this rendering is that it reminds me of the Deep South.
The Ainsworth House.
Yeah, maybe the
That's,
Ainsworth House.
yeah, when I first
I was
looked-
thinking New Orleans, I expect to see
Except for the battered
someone-
columns on the first floor.
Right,
Sure.
yeah, we could put
Yeah,
that, but that would not be appropriate either.
Huh?
Probably would not be appropriate either.
No.
well. How do you respond to the staff suggestions that we,
I can go back.
yeah, there.
We could, I mean, it says low pitch minimum 612. I mean, we could reduce the pitch even further on the main roof from the 712 to a 612. That would put the dormer right at the ridge if we did that. We could
Usually-
simplify the porch posts. Again, we're trying to emphasize the horizontal more, and the wider porch post will do that, as well as the elongated wraparound porch that wraps
Right.
around the one side.
But having that second porch draws your eye up, and usually if anything, it's just a little, walk out, on a bungalow as opposed to a vernacular. So, if they're happy with it, I guess it's kind of, to me, the basic design fits in, but there is some bungalow elements in it, but to me, it more reads to me like vernacular. So, which would keep everybody happy, maybe.
Well, if it were vernacular, we could go back to a simple column rather than the tapered columns.
Yeah,
Increase the roof pitch and possibly lower the wall height a foot or so, to make it more in the vernacular style. I don't think it's really the direction that Morris and Karen wanted to go with the house, so.
oh.
But
But when you're saying bungalow,
it's a modified bungalow.
is kind of, to me, it kind of, and I know you said you just threw this together quickly, that to me it reads more, like I said, like a vernacular with bungalow tendencies. Grant?
Yeah, I would have to agree, I guess, that I kind of feel like it's a little bit split the baby right now. And that it's kind of, the proportions don't really match the bungalow, the 1 to 1.5 type of thing. So if you were gonna go with the bungalow style, my preference would really be to see that second story be a half story. And even if you did spread out the massing of the house, but bring it down a little bit, or go with the vernacular style if you want to keep the height and embrace more of that. So kind of, I would maybe pick one direction a little bit more and go with that. And then any of those sort of unique elements, I guess, on the upper porch or on the columns and things, in your final submission, if you bring some supporting evidence of other styles that are why that would be appropriate, that will help us to definitely make a decision. Or
Well, and to me, the second story, like I said, vernacular, but then it has the knee braces and, and stuff like that.
Those
which
would
pull
not
in
work with the vernacular. but-
Yeah,
regarding the garage or in the ADU, I'm also kind of struggling there with the flat roof over the front portion of the garage, whether that would be appropriate or not. I understand why you would want it there and have sort of that elevated, both the second story porch on the main house and the kind of deck over there on the second, because that faces towards the river and you have a nice view, but it's a little unique. I don't know, it doesn't cleanly fit into the design guidelines, certainly, so.
Well, it obviously needs some horizontal banding and some trim there to really pull that off, which is not shown there.
but with the pitch on the roof and the two-story, again, it's more, the vernacular. And I know the post can, you know, be more in the bungalow style. And then from the way you've drawn the garage doors too, those are, you know, more of the bungalow style.
Right. Well, there were no vernacular style garage doors.
No,
Those are for horses.
those are horses, yes. So,
Keep the barn door type garage doors on it.
Yeah, yeah. So if we modified it to make it more of the bungalow style, drop it down, does the board feel that would be appropriate for the site?
as long as you have because you would probably then go out some to kind of make up for what you would lose on the second
Right.
story.
Yeah.
So if you went out that way, it would definitely be more of the
Yeah, and I don't see any problem. You have a nice sized lot
Lot.
here, being 10,000 square feet, not instead of 5, and you have
but he does have
the
some
whole
sloping and
60
stuff
feet
that,
of Apperson right of way on the one side and the alley on the other side, so it's not gonna feel tight
Well,
against.
It is an area we don't want to have a huge footprint either. We want to minimize the footprint and the impact on the site.
So then our other choice would be to make it look vernacular, which would mean pointing the roof up and changing the,
look, it's kind of vernacular now.
The window proportions are fairly vernacular. The window style would change. They would probably be a 1/1.
Longer.
I don't know. I'd like to keep the height. The height. I don't want to shrink the house down. I'd rather go up.
Okay.
With the
So you'd
vernacular
rather
would
do
be
the
better
vernacular.
if we switched it to the vernacular
We can just
style.
make the roof a little steeper and make
Yeah.
some modifications to the
Yeah.
columns.
So I do have a question for the board to speak a little bit about, even if vernacular, what is your opinion about a second story porch?
Just trying to remember the name of that
Did it really-
house that's right there across, you know where Super Tort is at? If you're in Super Tort
There
and you
isn't a
look to
whole
the
lot of
right,
vernacular with
it
second
has a porch
story
like that. It's not
porches,
covered.
is
but
there?
Well, I'm
Trying to think.
I think it's one I give you a picture of.
struggling to think
Yeah.
of a,
I can't remember the name of
second
that.
story
Is that what it is, Queen?
porch. I know there are a couple of places on High Street
The
that,
one behind the Petzold house has a, you know, little walkout, but it's not,
yes, it does.
and that's not vernacular, well, I guess it is. Yeah, I can't think of a
Yeah.
whole lot of second story
That's probably my biggest question. of
porch on the
how to-
second story.
If the owners want additional views on the second, how to adequately do that without losing its vernacular feel.
Yeah. I mean, I could see a little walkout, but not a full-on, if, do you know what I mean, Todd? You know, as opposed to a full-on,
Right.
all the way across from the front balcony. Because this almost looks colonial.
Well, we don't want to go that direction.
No, but do you know where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
You know? Because when I first looked at it, I thought of the Ainsworth House. So,
You know, we're not going for the antebellum look.
no.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of certainly non-Canadian, there's nothing like this, but in that type of style, you know, if there's sleeping porch type of thing of houses of that era, you know, that would kind
That
of be
would be
appropriate.
more
but it's generally not on the, it would not be in
on the
of
front,
house,
right? It'd be on the back, right?
Well, there are some sleeping porches that are on the front too. There are a few in McLaughlin.
Yeah, on the two I'm talking about on High Street are located between 3rd and 4th.
Right.
They're both currently set up as multi-unit houses, but they were originally built as single residence. One of them, or maybe both of them, the porch has been fully enclosed now, but they were originally built that way. But as far as Kenema is concerned, I just can't think of any precedent.
I don't think there are any in Kenema. I think you have to go to McLaughlin to find those precedents.
But most, like the sleeping porches, most of those were on the back. I mean, there are some, I think Cindy and Rick Toll's house up there on whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, I told you wrong. They're between 3rd and 2nd. Yeah, because they're past
I know the ones you're
Sparks.
talking about. There's also the one 6.
Going the wrong way here. Ah,
I see,
that's because I'm
that's
counting
in the
my,
back.
yeah, keep going another block. They're past the,
Oh, I know where you mean.
yeah, past the yellow house
One more on the right-hand side.
on the right-hand side, just past, there's the
Right there.
gray one and the green one. See, they both,
Right.
they were identical, but the one on the left has a sleeping porch. It was earlier a porch, and then it was enclosed.
Now, again, this is, doesn't fall into either one of the two styles that are
Right.
allowed. in
More of
Kenema.
Right, right.
This is a
And then
hybrid.
And that's
6th
been,
and
that's been
Madison.
kind of
There's another one is more of a bungalow style.
Sixth
So
and
we're
Madison.
between 4th and 5th. All right.
Sixth
Sixth and Madison.
6 in Madison.
Oh, right on the. Church, Madison, further up.
Mine it
Other
would
way.
be JQ.
John Adams,
6th.
Monroe,
Monroe.
Madison, next one. Nope.
Too far. There's the library.
Jackson.
Right here.
Okay, next block up then on 6.
Oh, yeah, this
Okay.
house.
Oh,
Yeah.
Tim and
That's another
Delma.
enclosed porch.
right.
But that's a, once again, a modified
Right.
bungalow. All right. I
Forgot about that. How deep is the porch? The bottom, the first floor and then the second floor? Are they both the same depth?
Yes, I think it's 6 or 8 feet, I can't recall.
6 foot something.
6, yeah.
You know, I'm wondering if you had used
Six.
it, sorry.
The upper one is 6'3.5", and the lower one is 14.6. Does that sound right? I'm looking at some pretty small type here.
I don't think it'd be 14.
14,
No, I
wow,
know
that's
it's
almost
not
as
deep.
deep as the house.
No.
No, you're looking
Oh,
up there.
yeah,
Like that was
okay,
deep as the
yeah.
house.
6'6".
Yeah.
There it is. I was looking at the great room. No wonder it was so big.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It's like that's too much deck for me.
I'm kind of wondering if maybe instead of having, if you wanted to go with bungalow and keep a second story, if instead of going with a gable and facing, if you put a hip
Go with a hip.
roof like that modified one and kept
And
it
that would
open underneath,
take some of that
would-
vertical out of it.
pull it down.
It would.
Mhm.
What are we talking about?
like the house on 6 in Madison where it had the hip roof and.
Oh,
It comes out and then it goes down like that.
oh,
I have the
Right on
walkout
the
in
end.
there.
It might not be quite as open on the on that second story deck, but it would pull the feel of the house down and,
Yeah,
yeah, might look kind of nice, actually, yeah.
definitely, but
I know Paul had a concern about the appropriateness of the bungalow style in this location. That's why I want to get the board's take on that because I don't feel it's inappropriate. There are other precedents.
right,
that can be met.
there's other ones in.
yeah, I see his point about with the historic homes, the way they do change from Second Avenue and lower, and then the ones that are Fourth and Fifth Avenue, but,
There's a lot of new
with
houses in there too.
construction, and I feel like you could choose either and it would be appropriate.
So if you were going with a hip roof on the main elevation, would you do the same on the Apperson Street elevation out on the left side of this photo?
The clipped,
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's going to give it more horizontal emphasis if we don't. And
looking at it from this side.
which I think is what we're after at the end of the day is to try to emphasize that horizontality more.
And is there a basement? Is that why
No, there is no basement.
you're just taking,
We're about
you're having to figure out
4
because
feet
of
above
the.
grade to
Okay.
get the site to
Okay,
work.
because I was gonna say, is there any way you could bring it down further?
Where you
okay.
don't really want to dig it into the,
Okay,
Right.
yeah, I understand that with the topography.
Might also use some landscaping, some retaining wall or something. rock
right. I was
in
kind of
front
reluctant to show this, but I thought for discussion, this would be better
Yeah.
to talk about.
So that keep the post from being quite so tall.
Yeah, and see, that I think is really, if you put your hand in front, you're covered up, that area, the first story part of, below where the railings are, it really,
It changes.
and you said something that you're also gonna have cover down below, like a,
Well, we'd have a lattice or some kind of
Lattice, okay.
screening and then.
and then
some
do the
planting in front.
landscaping and stuff. Yeah, because that really, if you just cover that up,
Yeah,
it
the other
really,
drawing shows that, the other drawing, if you drop down one.
But that makes it look taller than that
Does
drawing.
that make it taller?
what's that?
You can just kick me if you want to.
I think having that clipped gable really would,
It does change the height
yeah,
to width
when you really
ratio.
cover it up like that.
Yeah.
I still have, I agree with Grant about the deck over the garage. Not sure how you would address that. And then the second story, to me, that, pulls your eye up there and would, be competing with the house.
Yeah, I would probably. There are other two car garages with ADUs above them in the neighborhood. But they're 1.5 stories again, so the ADU takes up the whole width of the 2 stalls, but the roof, so that the sides are not as usable. So you end up with about the same usable space, but it's in the center more. I would probably like to see less prominent of a deck up there. I think you could still have it to kind of via the stairs and access and that, but maybe not so much. So it's, again, a little more horizontal.
Yeah.
How much less we talking about?
Do you know of a 2.5 car garage anywhere in Kenema?
Well, there's no historic two-car garage anywhere, Kenny, they're
Well-
all new construction. So I think in large part,
But
take you,
the width here is greater even than a regular two-car garage.
they can have up to a 600 square foot footprint.
Oh, okay.
So I
So
think they can
630
decide
by
how
20.
that,
Yeah.
that Tetris piece fits in.
Right.
And there were a lot of garages that had all flat roofs.
Yeah, right there on High Street.
Yes. Can you build them so they don't leak now?
So I hope so. Counting on it.
Interesting. Are you gleaning anything from this?
Yeah.
Okay. Would they then come back?
Yeah, so it's the applicants will kind of take your comments and then resubmit, they can always submit for another design advice or come in for the full land use application, which I'll notice to the neighbors and have the full staff report and land use review.
Yeah, I do hope we've been helpful. This is a
No, this has
different
been
kind
very
of
helpful because this
project.
is a very, we knew this was not, slam dunk vernacular style home, like
Right.
it's gonna be a little
Well, we
different.
look forward to seeing you come back then, and
Well, we may have two options for you, but
Well, but that, kind of gives you something.
we don't mind that.
To work with and, cool.
And it sounds like there will be a June meeting, so if you want to do design advice in June, we will be having it. I just won't be here.
Okay, thanks, Todd.
Thank you. You just gonna stay up there since?
Well, I'm just
Okay. Wherever my agenda went,
Here.
there it is. HR 1803.
Thank you.
For this, we're going to open the public record. Which requires the reading of the rules that apply to public hearings. This is a quasi-judicial land use hearing. We have just one hearing on land use applications tonight, and a staff report has been prepared and has been made available to the public 7 days before this hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. The staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the commission will follow is set out in state law and Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the chart over on the wall here. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. You should fill out your address on the card so the city will notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony by stating your name. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. A person may submit any written material while the public record is open. On each application, any written materials received by city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed on the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to staff, they will not be included in the public record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Historic Review Board makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised for consideration of the City Commission or LUBA or both without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond to it, that all parties can respond, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. So, thank you for your patience in listening to that. It is my understanding that there has been a request for a continuance on this hearing, and so we will grant that, but we will proceed with the public hearing and take testimony. And we will now open the record for file number 18-03, Historic Review Board, review of the reduction in size of the Newt Tollefson House in conjunction with construction of 23 new townhouse units. Does any commissioner have any ex parte conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statements to declare?
No.
No.
I do not, but I will point out that I am a realtor and I do sell houses in Oregon City, although I have not been involved in any transaction relating to this particular property. Does anyone in the audience wish to question any of the commissioners about these disclosures? In that case, we will move forward.
Right. And I visited the site.
Starting with the staff report.
Actually, we say who has visited the site.
Pardon? Oh, who has visited the site?
I did.
I have.
I have as well.
All right, now we will go to the
All right,
staff
thank you,
report.
Chair Basinger. This is a reduction in the size of the New Tollefson House in conjunction with the construction of 23 new townhomes. So in this situation, the board is not reviewing the townhomes for the design guidelines for new construction. What the board is asked to look at tonight is in conjunction with this specific proposal, not any proposal, but this specific proposal, is the reduction in the size of the landmark sufficient to be able to retain significant of the house itself? And so I'll go over the conditions of approval and some overlay photos, and we'll kind of talk it through, and then you can ask me questions. So this is the property. It's located at the intersection of Forsyth and Harley. You can see the house is located up here. It used to access towards Clackamas River Drive a long time ago, so it's kind of oriented towards the river. The property is in a bit of a unique zoning area. We have industrial zone along Clackamas River Drive. These two parcels, both the historic house and the Oregon City Grange are zoned R2 multifamily, which has a density of 1 unit for every 2,000 square feet. And in Oregon City, we do have a requirement to meet 80% of the density of the zone. Now, the Historic Review Board can review how big those units are and where they're located, but they don't have the ability to give a variance for the minimum number of units. But the size, location, and design, in conjunction with this reduction, the board can look at is in how that could affect the historic significance. The properties across the street are zoned R3.5. Which allows duplexes on 7,000 square feet and single-family residential on 3,500 square feet. Farther north, properties are 10 single-family residential, and to the south and kind of the gold is R8 single-family 8,000. This is a view of Harley looking at the historic house right here. This is, we'll talk about the oak tree just recently in the next slide, but this is kind of the larger oak tree. There are existing larger trees on site, but there's also, from the applicant, some question about the health, so I'll let the applicant speak about that when it's his turn. This is, again, once again, a view from Harley looking at the historic house, and then that oak tree again. This is on Forsyth as you're heading up the hill. So you're coming up from Clackamas River Drive. The house is over here on your left. And this is at the intersection of Harley and Forsyth. So if you're looking down the hill towards Clackamas River Drive and the river, and you're looking north from Holly. So this is that intersection right here. This is the historic picture of the house. If you recall, earlier this year, the applicant came in to work on a porch redesign that was approved. They're also making other exterior alterations that meet the Historic Review Board policies, so they're reciting the house. The survey form does talk about mature trees. So one question the Historic Review Board can look at tonight, is there any particular are there any particular trees that by themselves are tied to the historic significance of the site or not? So staff right now has felt that no, any one tree is necessarily tied, and this is kind of has had more of an open, historically an open house on a kind of a hillside feel. Of course, nature in Oregon takes over a little bit, so there are quite a lot of volunteer trees and shrubbery. But that's one thing the board can look at as how to look at the landscape, the existing landscaping on the site, and has that have any effect on the reduction of the landmark? So the applicant did propose what the landmark's reduction in size would be, and this is not a proposed partition, but this is actually a reduction in the overlay district. So it'll all stay as one lot. The historic house will be a unit in this development. But when in future, so if someone comes in on one of the units to do something, or the development wants to do an accessory building or do something, and it's outside of whatever boundary the Historic Review Board approves, there will be no further historic review on those changes. So the reason why we're tying these two together is you could just come in and reduce the size of the landmark. I mean, so the applicant could come in. But what the applicant has done is reduce the size of the landmark in conjunction with this application. So if this proposal is built and there's a certificate of occupancy, then at that time the landmark reduction would be reduced to whatever the dimensions the board signs on. If this proposal doesn't move forward or has to change substantially, it would have to come back to the board. So that's kind of how the conditions are tied in.
In order to be reduced.
Yeah, so it have to be, so the reduction doesn't happen really until the certificate of occupancy of the development to whatever boundary the board deems is appropriate. This shows the layout. You have the, it's all on one tax lot. That's a townhome development. So it's, even though it looks like townhomes, it's not single family attached where each person owns the lot. It's all as one multifamily development of townhomes. And that can be rental or condo. We don't get involved in which way it is. It's 24 lots, 24 units on one lot. So this is a three-dimensional layout. You'll see the historic house right here, kind of seen from Harley on the internal driveway, Once again, this is another layout showing, the applicant went with more of a bungalow design rather than a vernacular design, and I can let him speak, but felt that kind of a higher quality bungalow design would differentiate from the historic house and not compete. And what the applicant has done is provided some additional design elements that are above and beyond what's required for site plan and design review, such as the materials and the trim on all four sides of the building. So this kind of shows the volume of the historic house and the next door neighbor closest townhome. So you'll see it's slightly larger. It's also slightly higher up on the slope. But you'll see how those two relate to each other. So the conditions of approval, real briefly, as I mentioned, staff feels that the proposal on the rear of the house is just a little too close. So I recommend as staff, and I'll go back, that this yellow area, that it's it's increased to 10 more feet to allow a 20-foot space between the historic house and the new line. Let's see. And as I explained, the landmark boundary is done at the certificate of occupancy of the townhome. So if this project doesn't move forward or is substantially altered, it will have to come back to the Historic Review Board. But once the certificate of occupancy is released, all future development proposals in the area not part of the designated landmark would just have to meet site plan design review requirements as a multifamily development. You're basically taking future review authority away. As always, there's always some small changes from when the board approves something to when something gets built. So I tried to look at, under conditions approval 5, what's the threshold of a minor change that could still be considered kind of part of this first review by the Historic Review Board? It wouldn't substantially change. And what would be a substantial change that the applicant would have to go back to the board for? So these subsection 5, A, B, C, D, or E can change, but that's generally how I saw, as I always like to as staff, when someone comes with a revision, I got to figure out, does this have to go back to the board? So I like clear and objective direction. I think actually everyone likes clear and objective direction. So if there's additions or revisions, I'm open for that. And so that's my presentation. But basically, staff sees, I'm going to go back to here. There have been a fair amount of landmarks in Oregon City that maybe were in the county for quite a long time. And then over years, they have come into the city, so they were on much larger lots. And they were zoned for urban development. And the question is, how do you allow urban development, but also be able to retain the historic significance of a house? And so some examples that I mentioned in the staff report are the Ainsworth House. Actually went through the Ainsworth subdivision, and that became a larger lot in the subdivision. That also happened with the McCarver House, the McCarver subdivision up off of Warner Parrott. And that was actually, once again, a larger lot in a subdivision. Recently, just last year, the Historic Review Board looked at the Hackett House down on 17th, which was actually had this kind of
hotel.
Yeah, had this odd. It's again area that was part of the historic lot, but was really invasive species of not really part of the formal landscaping. And so the board, the Historic Review Board, reduced the size of the Hackett House to allow that additional area to be brought into the parking lot of the hotel adjacent next door. So those are kind of how staff has seen this. So that's the larger question is this big enough? And then knowing that the applicant is at their minimum for their density of the lot, knowing that they probably can't remove any more dwelling units to still meet their 80%. If you wanted to increase the size of the boundary, how would you recommend changing the design to still allow that number of dwelling units? So that's some of that question related to the large oak tree, which on a staff level, I did not recommend be incorporated as part of the landmark boundaries because of its location. And I'm gonna bring it back here. It's far up on Harley Avenue. If you look here, it's located right here. So not knowing how you would draw that boundary to retain that tree and keep it part of the landmark and allow the development to go through. So those are all things the board can think about. and I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. We'll give the applicant,
Okay,
Turn to
Todd Iceland
tell us
again.
what you wanna do.
Iceland Architects, 1307 7th Street, Oregon City. The property developer and owner is here too, Lonnie Young. You wanna come up?
that's why it was.
This is a unusual project because Lonnie came to us and he wants to restore the existing home, doesn't want to tear it down like most developers would. He doesn't want to build 45 units on the site. And he wants to build the bare minimum that he can. We're actually including the existing home as our 23rd unit to get to the minimum density.
Okay.
So we're trying to do a very high-quality development. It's not your typical apartment project. Each unit's designed as a townhome with a attached garage, which I think will be very desirable and probably, you know, have good long-term tenants, which is his goal ultimately at the end of the day. These are not going to be sold individually or condominiumized. I mean, his goal is to retain ownership of these. So I think, you know, we tried to be compatible with the existing home, but also economical in the construction, but using high-quality materials and having design elements so they're not looking like, you know, every other townhome development you see everywhere else in the metro area. We have some challenges. The historic review is one of many processes we have to go through on this project. We have a geologic hazard because of the steep slope going down to the industrial area. We have an environmental overlay on a portion of the site. Not sure where that really comes from, but we're addressing it. You know, there are going to be improvements along Harley and Forsyth that are required, including sidewalks and pedestrian pathway along Forsyth. We're doing a lot to detain the stormwater on site and do a very environmentally friendly development here. The reduction for the historic landmark is something that was actually suggested by staff, and I think it's an excellent idea because the site is very large if you're considering the whole 2 acres for this one house, and the house was altered severely over time. It initially, as Christina said, faced towards the river, and it's right now with the circular drive that's there, goes to the back of the house, it makes no sense. With the development, the way we're coming in, am I going the right way or the wrong way? With the driveway coming in off Harley, we're actually going to emphasize the original front entry of the house by having that parking area for that existing home, because that home will not have its own garage. So we'll be enhancing that. The fire department is also required that we have a secondary access onto Forsyth, but that will not be a public access. It will be emergency vehicles only. So everyone's going to be coming in and out of the property onto Harley. So that's kind of where the layout of the buildings came up with, or we came up with that. The oak tree, we would love to preserve it, but we've been told that it's not in good health and it's in a very unfortunate location for any development to take place on the site. So I think the proposed boundary gives the house probably more room than it needs. We've just actually said, well, we'll take everything from the top of the bluff to the south, and then we're okay with Christina's recommendation to go 20 feet from the back of the house for that other boundary that she has highlighted with the yellow. So that's what we'd like to ask the board to approve.
Okay.
If there are any questions, happy to answer them.
That little accessory building in the back that's there now, I'm not sure.
The garage that's not there anymore?
It's still there.
It's,
Oh,
I was,
okay.
yeah, I was there today.
Okay.
So it's going. Yeah, I
It is
kind
gonna
of
be
figured as
demolished.
much.
There was another addition on the building, which is now gone.
And there's no way to save the tree.
I don't think so.
That is one big tree, but, that,
Yeah, and we're, really trying to do a low-impact development, and unfortunately.
well, I know,
We will be planning, I got the landscape plan this morning from the landscape architect, and we're more than mitigating for that tree.
There's something to be said for young trees with a long life out in front of them. Believe me, I know.
maybe there's a way you can use that's an oak, isn't it?
It
I
is an
think,
oak.
yeah. Use that wood
Yeah,
somewhere within, the property.
nice bench or something.
I'd do a few benches. Because we reviewed, when it came before, we were looking at the new construction, and there's a lot of information in here, with the new construction, but we're not looking at any of that. We're just looking at the,
You are looking at it, but not under the design guidelines for new
Okay.
construction. You're looking at it in a sense
sense
of
of how it
with the
impacts.
proposal, will it impact?
Right. And I had hesitations before about it being, close, but I think so you would, where the yellow line is, the red line would go out to the outside edge of that, correct?
That's about 10
Approx-
feet.
okay.
I mean, I
Okay.
think the idea was a condition making a clear objective.
And that's the
condition.
back of the house, right? Because the access would be on the.
That's the back
other
of the
side.
house.
Right. Okay, what most people see as the house right now is not the front of the house.
Right. It's kind of
Very
like the
strange
ones along the
orientation.
bluff that, face out to the bluff. And there'd be sidewalks from what I'm looking at, in front of the house to walk by?
Yes,
Okay.
you would have a pedestrian and vehicular connection back there.
Grant?
No questions?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Alan Redbourne. And we have your material here, your
Yeah,
submittal.
so some of that is Alan Redbourne, 15914 Apperson Boulevard. Some of that is definitely issues with the design, which we're not going over today, but I appreciate that they're trying to have the lowest impact possible in the neighborhood, but I can tell you that we cannot fit 23 more units on there. If you want to talk more about design issues, we can, but for now, I do want to defend the oak tree. I am the newest house across the street, actually, and they tried to take my oak tree, and Cyrus there actually saved it for me, and now it's actually the best thing on my property, honestly. I love that oak tree. I have a deck under it, and if at all possible, I would like to save it, and I understand that they're at the minimum of 23 units, but it should stay there, and it's kind of complicated because this minimum that we're dealing with, but looking at their application, they said that you can't see the house from the street, and I would argue that that's not really true at all. I mean, if you live on Harley over there, you can clearly see the house and its historic significance. And if you look at the drawings that they had on there earlier, I mean, you can't see the house, definitely won't be able to see the house at all once they put those apartments in front of it. I mean, you're completely surrounding it on all edges. The left side there is bluff and then heating and cooling. And then you'll have 3 apartments on front on Forsyth and all the apartments on front on Harley. I don't know how that is maintaining any historical relevance of the house when you're basically stuffing it in the back corner. And you know, I would also argue that the oak tree isn't very sick. I mean, you can even see in the picture it's green and doing just fine. I feel like they're just arguments thrown out there to make the application look a bit better. But I think that's all for me regarding the historic significance. Unless you want to get into any apartment, and I mean, you're gonna have a street full of cars. I don't know where they're gonna go actually, but you're gonna have cars and apartments, and it's not gonna feel like a historical property at all anymore once you get this on there.
Questions?
So where do you live in conjunction?
If you go back to the gold on top, I'm the flag lot 15914 right there. So I look through my yard at the at the property.
Oh, okay, because I was trying to figure Apperson and, yeah, okay.
And so the reason that I asked for the continuance was because basically none of the people that I've talked to on Forsyth or on Apperson were aware of it at all. You can look at my packet, but basically Todd went to the Park Place Association. Which meeting was that? It was the steering committee, which is not public. It's only for the members of the steering committee where he
The
presented.
CIC?
Neighborhood Association.
No,
the neighborhood. Oh, okay.
Association, correct. So he went there and, you know, they asked him, did you talk to the people? And he said yes. And did you, you know, did they have any objections to it? And he said no, which I find very hard to believe because anyone that lives on Harley would not be fond of having this changed. But none of the people on Forsyth or Apperson were talked to. So once I found out about it, I didn't have time to talk to any neighbors or get any written statements or anything. So I appreciate the continuance on it.
Is that within the 300, I mean, the
So
notification
the
zone?
Historic Review Board application does not require a neighborhood meeting. What Mr. Island was working with the Park Place on is the upcoming site plan and design review application.
Okay.
Yeah, so this was kind of dropped on me. So yeah, if I have some time, I can get some more statements from people.
Okay. You will have your more time.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Cy?
Cyrus Fashini. I live on Forsyth. I'm actually the only home that faces Forsyth currently. This would make 3 more homes that face Forsyth, which is fine by me. But my main issue, and I'm going to keep it historical, and I'm going to keep it out of the design phase, is what's happening to the Park Place neighborhood in general right now. I think it's getting the raw end of the deal as far as densification of Oregon City. Being near all of that industrial zoning that you see, which is right next to the train tracks, which is then right next to the freeway, completely cuts off the historic view of the Clackamas River, which is what the Knut Tollefson house would have had when he built it on the bluff there. This is one of the last lots of this size with a house of this age and significance that has not been sub-parceled up and built upon and had other little dwellings. It's a beautiful piece of land that I'm convinced has some archaeological significance, possibly some Native American significance, We know for a fact that the Clackamas Indians camped on the bluff high above the floodplain. This house was built above the floodplain on purpose. Nobody was building down at Clackamas River Drive at the time. We just had the 175th anniversary at the Grange, which is right next to this home. So I can picture all of these people coming to the neighborhood, driving down Harley. They see this giant oak tree, this big field, this old house. It's very almost Little House on the Prairie, I guess, if you will, which was very fitting for celebrating, you know, the end of the Oregon Trail. And there are no homes, well, this is getting into the design phase, but all the homes are unique in the neighborhood, every single one. There's no spot where there's two homes that look alike right next to each other. To throw 22 of them that look exactly alike shocks me. I think it would look strange from the freeway. You would look up, because I know they'll cut all those cottonwoods down, even though it's in, anyway. I can picture what it would look like from the freeway, and it would dramatically alter the ridge line above the heating temp place there. Again, that's getting into the design, I understand, but that's also getting into the reduction of the landmark. I feel like there was a reason the landmark was so large in the first place, or was it just because that was the lot size? Yeah, rambling a little bit, but yeah, I guess that's my opinion on it. I'm actually not against it being developed. I'd like to see the tree saved, the home saved, which I'm so glad it is being saved. I actually thought it was getting torn down. Went over and took what I thought were some last-minute photographs of it. Because I knew the woman who lived in the house, and we were friendly, we were neighbors. And so I'm not against the development. I understand the predicament that the city has put with the 80% thing. I understand that. And I just hope that our neighborhood doesn't, you know, get so dense that all these larger lots just slowly disappear, and the whole look of that part of Park Place from the freeway, and I don't know why I keep saying from the freeway, but it's beautiful. When you look up, you see all these old, you know, fir trees and all these old oak trees that are, you know, sadly getting cut down across the city. So, yeah, I look forward to the continuance.
Okay. Regarding the continuance, are we going with a date certain on that?
We are. I will not be here, but Laura Turway will be able to staff the June meeting. So it'll be June 26th, 2018, and I'm hearing the comments, and I'll be able to provide you a staff addendum memo that we can add to the file. I'm kind of hearing questions about the trees from the applicant, as well as I can provide state archaeological requirements for private property, and I can add that to the staff report for the people who have questions about how the city processes sites that may have archaeological resources. Those are the two things I'm hearing from the comments, but I'm also, one more. As far as I know, and an applicant will check from the last application, but this is not approving the removal of that garage. So if the applicant wants to come in and demolish the garage, they'll come in a separate application sometime within this development process.
Okay.
Unless it was previously approved with the staff report that Kelly
Don't
did.
think it was. Do you remember anything?
I don't remember a discussion on the garage.
Okay, so that will be at sometime in the
separate.
future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I thank you all for your time.
So we just need a motion to continue the application.
I move that we continue the hearing for HR 1803 to June 26th, 2018.
All right, Claire Met,
Aye.
Grant Blythe,
Aye.
Chair Basinger,
Aye.
motion carries.
And with that, we close the public hearing for today. And on my agenda, that's the end of the meeting unless you
I
have
have
something
one little
else.
thing, just
sure.
announcement. This year is the 175th anniversary of the Oregon Trail. Don't ask me what it's called instead of sesquicentennial, but anyway, so there's lots of things planned. One that is being planned is August 25th and 26th down at the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center. It is, I'll pass it, they're inviting people from Baker City, Aurora, Shampooey, they're having Curtis Trailers with his, things, Philip Foster Farm and Yamhill County at this point. The Optimist, which I'm part of, we're doing a barbecue chicken dinner, and there's also going to be some salmon and, and buffalo burgers, and there's going to be all kinds of activities and music and stuff, so mark your calendars.
And make sure to provide that to myself and Kristen Brown, our new communications staff. We can get that out on Oregon City's communication channels.
That's what she sent me, but it's, it should be a pretty well-attended, big event, so.
All right.
Oh, and then also, one other one is on July 27th, the trail ban. I don't know if you guys remember, you've been around long enough for the trail ban, right?
Yeah.
Mindy and Merv Ross from Quarter Flash, they're going to have a concert down at the Interpretive Center. And there's going to be a special dinner, for only 80 people with Merv and Rindy. Merv and, the couple there for the dinner and stuff before the concert, so that the coalition did. Cool. Lots of fun things.
All right, Chair, are you ready to adjourn?
Now we can adjourn.
Okay.